Health Minister Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi has assured Parliament that his department will continue to roll out antiretroviral treatment. Motsoaledi appeared before the Health Committee in Parliament to update on the United States President Donald Trump's withdrawal of the PEPFAR funding and how this will impact programs in the country. The minister joins me now to elaborate just a little bit further. Minister Aaron Motsoaledi, thank you so much for the time this morning. Really appreciate it here on Newzroom Afrika. Allow me to begin by saying, having heard your delivery to the Scopa on health just yesterday, I wanted to just ask then if the fiscus can actually cover and handle the 4.7 billion that is needed ultimately for the more than 15,000 staff in the 27 districts, plus, of course, the 10% of the ARVs that are indeed dished out as well across the country. Can the fiscus manage that? Do we have a plan to make do without PEPFAR?
Good morning, Arabile. Morning to the listeners and viewers out there. And thank you very much for having me. I think you have asked me two questions. The second one is the easiest. You spoke about 10% of the money that by ARVs, whether fiscus can cover it. And the answer is that that doesn't have to happen. That 10% comes from Global Fund, which is based in Geneva, which is not PEPFAR at all. It's a global fund that has been formed by the world to help fight TB, HIV, AIDS, and malaria. When the Global Fund meets to collect money, they call it an investment round or a replenishment round. Even South Africa contribute money to there. Contribute according to your capacity, your financial capacity, and the money is distributed according to the burden of diseases. So that part does not feature here. The second question you ask is about PEPFAR money, which pays for staff and operations in 27 of the 52 districts of South Africa. That part I have just presented. What I presented to the Portfolio Committee yesterday, we presented to Treasury. We also presented to Lekgotla. I cannot make a unilateral decision that the fiscus can carry that, because the fiscus is controlled mostly by the Minister of Finance. I cannot say that independently without him. I made the presentation to them. We are waiting. You are aware that this review, according to the US, is going to take 90 days. But so for now, we'll have to sit together and put our head together. One of the things we're going to look at is the staff that is being paid by PEPFAR. How many of the staff members do we really need if things come to a push, or if things get worse? Because you have to look at the number of people who are hired and see whether we can keep such luxuries, or we can keep the program the same, or whether there could be saving somewhere in terms of the new order, etc. All those things decision needs to be made. They can't be made by health alone. They have to be joint decisions.
One would think, however, Minister, that none of this would have been a luxury, considering that we haven't even reached the full-on target of 95, 95, 95, right? Which you had also explained then yesterday, 95% of those that are tested, 95% of those that are tested are then diagnosed and ultimately are on antiretroviral treatment, being 95% for that. So if none of those, none of that should actually then be a luxury, what's the actual contingency plan that you're seeing come forward from some of the provinces and some of the districts with regards to ensuring that we can survive post-PEPFAR, if that happens to be the case?
Well, we only met the provinces last week, discussed this matter, asked them to put up contingency plans, because the provinces cannot be one size fits all. As you heard me yesterday saying, for instance, the 7 districts that are affected in KZN, 5 in Eastern Cape, 4 in Gauteng, and until you get only 1 in Western Cape. So they are going to respond differently. They can't be one size fits all. And we are giving them a chance to do so. The only thing that we agreed upon is that no one who is on ARVs should ever find themselves in a situation where they stop taking their ARVs because that will be extremely dangerous and disastrous to the individual, to the country, and to the whole world as a whole. And this is because when you stop taking ARVs, you develop drug-resistant strain of HIV. When you transmit it, if you are still transmitting HIV, you are transmitting the drug-resistant strain. You can transmit it in the country. It can cross borders and go to other countries. It causes very big problem because it's also extremely expensive to treat. So for that reason, that is the decision we've taken, that look, try everything under the sun to make sure that nobody takes their ARVs. That one we have agreed on. As to the other contingency plans, we are giving provinces a chance to sit and work on them because they are so different. They can't be put in one basket.
Yeah. Will you be looking to raise or request more funds from the Global Fund?
Well, every 3 years after the investment round, please apply to Global Fund. The money is not just this. You bid, actually, let me put it that way. I'm sure you remember how countries bid to host the World Cup.
Yes.
It's a bid in the similar way where you get an expert who write and say, this is what South Africa do if you give us this much, if you give this much to so we have got what we call a country bid, which involves the government and NGOs, each one of them bidding for what they think they could do, and the Global Fund will sit and decide how much they give for that bid.
Yeah. What happens in the meantime? As we're getting this review happening to things like the Thuthuzela care centers, which are more than 50 of them, right? They provide support for rape and sexual assault survivors. What happens to that? Because some of that is funded by US aid, and we know for sure that US aid has been, some of the workers have been put on forced leave, and staff must return home in 30 days.
Well, I'm not sure that in home in 30 days. What I'm sure about is that an announcement was made that they must stop work. A few days later, another announcement was made by the Secretary of State in the US, Marco Rubio, who said no, he is suspending that announcement until a review has been completed in 90 days' time. In my understanding, it will then mean that things are back to normal. And his instruction was very clear, that except in certain areas, and the areas were named, for instance, that work must resume until after the 90 days review period, except in areas where people have to do abortions, even in a legal way in that particular country. And secondly, that you can't, for instance, go on if you are doing operation on transgender operations, those ones will have to stop, or where the issues deal with LGBTQW plus, those are said to have been things that must not happen. But the others, which are all life-saving, like testing people for HIV/AIDS, giving them ARVs, treating conscious diseases, other diseases that affect them, that those ones, as far as I understand the instruction, those ones must go on.
All right, and allow me then to read this to you then, Minister, if you will, because this is actually from the usaid.gov website then out in the United States. It's really just one page. This is all that is on the website. Nothing else exists. And just very shortly, it says on Friday, February 7th, 2025, all USAID direct hire personnel will be placed on administrative leave globally, with the exception of designated personnel responsible for mission-critical functions. It later on goes on to say that for USAID personnel currently posted outside the United States, the agency, as well as the department, is currently preparing a plan with all applicable requirements and laws under which the agency would arrange and pay for return to travel to the United States within 30 days and provide the termination of certain contracts. I mean, that becomes the big worry here, is that with those contracts ending, people returning in 30 days, things like the Thuthuzela care centers ultimately lack funding, but also will lack workers.
Well, I I'm not sure whether we are not, confounding things here. The PEP money is from the President Emergency Fund for AIDS Relief. And you are also talking of USAID,
Yes.
which is another independent structure, which has been there for a long time. Remember, USAID has been there, I don't know, for how many decades as an international funder. PEP specifically established in 2002 by former President George Bush Jr. after the world complained bitterly that if HIV/AIDS is not contained, especially in countries which are of high burden, especially on the African continent, is going to spread all over the globe, it will be a zero-sum game. So an emergency fund called PEPFAR was established specifically to help fight HIV and AIDS. That is different from the other funding agencies which the US is engaged in. So we are talking here of PEPFAR, and we know the number of people specifically they are supporting. I gave you a number of 15,154 in 27 districts in 9 provinces in South Africa.
Yeah, I understand that. I asked, Minister, and I'm well aware that these are ultimately two separate sort of entities, so to speak, but I asked because they both still fit under the health umbrella with regards to both USAID and, of course, PEPFAR, which, as you made note of, are indeed created under different guises. The USAID was even created by John F. Kennedy, of course, many decades ago. Overall, Minister, are you anticipating any further communication regarding PEPFAR, regarding the future of it from the US, or is that just ultimately us sitting to wait then for the 90-day review?
Well, it looks like things are changing very fast in the US. You never know. It looks like we do get fresh instruction every week. We met with the Charge d'Affaires, Ms. Dana Brown, on Monday to discuss these issues. He also emphasized that whatever we are not clear about, we need to write to them so that they also get from Washington, because it's in Washington where these decisions are made. They are just conveying what messages they receive, which they receive sometimes at the same time with us. So we never know what instruction we'll get tomorrow. But for now, we are carrying on the instruction, the latest instruction, where they said work must go on until a review period of 90 days.
Minister, I'm going to ask a very cheeky question here, if you'll allow me. Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State in the United States, has even tweeted a couple of hours ago saying that he will not be attending the G20 summit here in South Africa when that happens on February the 20th and the 21st. Do you think U.S. ties with South Africa have been severed quite ostensibly? Can they be fixed? Should they be fixed? And I don't speak just on an international basis where, of course, Minister Ronald Lamola would be in charge. I'm even just talking just when it comes to things like PEPFAR, to things like USAID. Should we be fixing that relationship?
Well, the world is a better place if people are cooperating with each other and fighting with each other. So I will choose the route of cooperation, regardless of what the Secretary of State has tweeted. We will continue in that regard. We have already issued invitations for G20 presidency. A lot of meetings are going to take place, which the president will speak about today in the State of the Nation address. Maybe you should wait for him. I shouldn't be ahead mentioning things that are above my pay grade, because you are aware that the question you have asked is mostly belonging to the DERCO and presidency and not to a person at my level. I'm sorry about that.
No, that's exactly why I said it was a cheeky question indeed. But Minister, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us.